This episode of Super Boothers is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/superboothers. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Welcome to Super Boothers. My name is Ryan.
And I'm Ismail, and I am pumped because this show is called Super Boothers, and today we have someone that is well deserving of that title. We're lucky to be joined by Brian Miller. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm a big fan of the show, so I'm really excited to be here joining you guys.
We're going to have a lot of fun. We promise it won't hurt.
I'm looking forward to it.
So what did you start? So Brian has a LA Photo Party, and I'm really interested to know, what did you do before LA Photo Party?
Yeah, so before LA Photo Party, I was teaching ninth grade biology.
No way.
Yeah. I taught in an all-girls school in Pasadena, California. That was the main thing I did. I also led student travel trips for a nonprofit organization, taking students around the world to study environmental education and do some community service and learn about culture and stuff. Yeah, and I also ran a school garden program. So I was doing all kinds of random things with kids and the environment.
So how do you go from dissecting frogs to photo booths?
Hey, they have more in common than you might think. I had done photography my whole life, really, since I was about 13 years old. I had been into photography mostly as a hobby, but a little bit as freelance as well. And the photography stuff was starting to pick up right around the same time as I got into teaching. And so my first year teaching, I actually ended up subletting an apartment from a photographer randomly on Craigslist. And so the photographer left a little mini photo studio in his living room. And I said, hey, is it cool?
When you moved out?
Yeah. So he was like off for 6 months gallivanting around Brazil or something. And so when he handed me the keys, I said like, hey, is it cool if I use the little photo setup in the corner of your, living room? And he said, sure. Yeah. So I had friends over for a potluck dinner party one night, and we were all drinking and hanging out. And my friends were like, hey, can we take pictures in the little photo booth? I was like, hey, I don't want to be like manning a camera. I'm trying to, have a drink and hang out with my friends. So I hooked my camera up to EOS Utility, which is the program that comes free with Canon cameras. And there's a function in there that you can set it to take pictures at regular intervals. So I had it take a picture every 10 seconds. And then I processed the images automatically with this other program that made them black and white. But here's the thing. This was 10 years ago. So if you can remember back to 10 years, this was before a lot of people had digital cameras. This was right as digital cameras were becoming really common on cell phones. So it was a different time, and most people hadn't seen a studio quality digital photo instantly. They might have seen it on a small flip phone or something. And so anyways, I hit start and I left the room, and I came back 2 hours later and my friends were still jumping in the air, then running over the computer screen to see it, then running back in front of the camera to do a handstand before the 10-second countdown got to zero. And, so it turned into this whole thing. And then at the end of the night, one of my buddies said, hey, I'm having a party next weekend. You think you could pack this up and bring it to my party? And so that's how LA Photo Party was born.
It's amazing how these things start. It really is.
Yeah.
So I think that it's always helpful to see where people came from, but I'm also curious to do something different, is to maybe have you explain where you are now, what you do now, just so people can get a little bit of color that may not know you, of your stature in the industry and how big a photo booth business can potentially get.
Yeah, so we've had an amazing journey. It's been a roller coaster ride of ups and downs, just like any other small business. And so today, 10 years later, this is our 10-year anniversary of running LA Photo Party. We have our main office in Los Angeles. The company had been run out of my house until a year ago, and we acquired this amazing property that's our headquarters now. And there's about 20 of us in that office day to day. And then we have a smaller office in New York with about 6 people who are doing admin stuff. And then we have a pool of people who work events. So all in all, there's about 60 employees on our payroll, although some of them are working events, so they're not necessarily full-time or close to full-time. We have affiliates in Europe. So Elliot Gosling, who a lot of you know, helps us out with a lot of stuff in Europe. So for example, we just went on tour with U2, and so we were able to do dates all across the US and in Europe. We're the official photo company for VidCon, which used to just be in Anaheim, but now went this year to Australia and Amsterdam. So we have sort of partners all over the world that we can call on. And that's for the event side of what we do. And then our company also makes Photo Booth Upload, which is photo booth software, and Photo Party Upload, which is sharing software. And, we have something like 3,000 users, registered users on those systems. And so we went from a company working in my back porch to a company with a pretty wide reach, and we're still having a lot of fun doing it.
Well, I'm exhausted just listening to that. I mean, so when did it come? Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's one more branch, I guess, to what we do that I should mention, which is so we do events, we write software, and then we fabricate photo booths. So we make the Infinite, which is a 3-camera system. It's got a slow motion camera, DSLR, and a webcam, so it can do light painting at the same time as animated burst GIFs and slow motion video and all that kind of stuff. And that booth won the Photo Booth of the Year award for the last 2 years from the Photo Booth Network. So thanks to everyone who voted for the Infinite. That's been a crazy roller coaster ride. And we just released the Venture, which is our new take on the Infinite. That's a smaller, more portable version that we're super excited to be releasing soon.
At what point do you think that it went from being a hobby to being a business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, like I mentioned, I had a buddy who said, "Can you bring this to my party?" And at that party, someone said, "I'll pay you to bring this to my party." And so it started growing from there, but it really was a hobby. You're right. And at that time I was teaching summer school. I made a little website myself. I don't know anything about website design. And I was using my cell phone as the business number. My brother put me in touch with someone from a publication called Daily Candy. It was like a little email geared for women in their 20s and 30s in LA about something cool you might want to know about in Los Angeles. And he put me in touch with her. And she said she might be interested in writing a story about what we're doing. We were bringing, at that time we were bringing full sort of fashion photography studios to parties is essentially what it was. And so I did this little phone call with her and I told her all about it and then didn't think anything of it. And so I'm in class, summer school class, teaching class, and I feel my phone vibrating in my pocket. But it doesn't stop. It just kept vibrating and vibrating and vibrating and vibrating for the entire class. I'm trying to teach a lesson on like how magnets work or something like that. And so the class ended and the kids went out to recess and I looked at my phone and I was like, what is going on? I had like 100 missed calls or something. So I checked the voicemail and first it was like, your mailbox is full. And I was like, oh gosh, what is happening? I started playing the messages and people were like, yeah, I saw you on Daily Candy this morning. I'm calling about your Daily Candy article. I saw you on Daily Candy. Want to hire you for a party. And I was like, oh my gosh, I called a friend and I gave him my password to my voicemail. And I said, yo, every 10 seconds, please call my voicemail, write down the messages, and then delete them because the mailbox is full.
Oh, God.
And so that day we got 5,000 hits on our website. This was like a dinky website I had made myself, and that's really what blew everything up from there.
So that's an awesome way to really get like instant exposure.
It was crazy. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
So I think what the point that he's missing here is that phone was a Nokia phone.
I mean, this was old school. This was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I'm actually really curious going back to, you in that time frame, your mindset then. It doesn't seem like you were really, gunning to be this industry leader. It seemed like it kind of happened organically, naturally. And I guess the question is, how can that happen to someone that's not really aiming for it and everyone else that's trying so hard to get to that elite status is struggling? What do you think is missing?
Craigslist.
Right, exactly. I mean, I was advertising on Craigslist when it was just a hobby. I'm not going to lie. But look, like, I didn't want to be an industry leader back then because there was no photo booth industry community. I didn't know it existed. It was so different at that time. That was before the Photo Booth Network. That was before Photo Booth Expo. That was before Super Boothers. I mean, that
was before any like product ever existed. Even no, I mean seriously, like even like software. I mean, right. I remember when I first got started, I was like, crap, I can't get this to work. How do I fix this? I mean, you can only Google so much. I mean, there was no resource, no nothing for troubleshooting anything. You really had to figure it out on your own. Yeah, no, I mean, I was using, so I like I said, it was a full photo fashion photography setup. Like, so we had a 10-foot white backdrop and studio lighting and a camera on a tripod. And so there was no automation really. We could use the OS utility and set the camera to take a picture automatically
every 5 or 10 seconds, but a lot of time we were taking the pictures ourselves, like as if we were fashion photographers. And I say we because I really quickly got into the habit of saying we, even though it was just me, because it made us sound bigger. So I was going to every party. It was just me. And then, someone at one of these parties said, really early on, said, can you figure out how to print instantly? And so like you said, Ryan, I had to figure out how to print instantly, and it's not like I could just post on a comment board. There was no Facebook group about photo booths. So, it was a lot of like going to Fry's Electronics and trying different printers and learning what dye sublimation meant. I'd never heard of dye sublimation, and so then it was just me, and I'd lug the printers and I'd lug the backdrops, I'd lug the lights, and I'd set it all up myself. And luckily, but to your point, Ismail, this was a lucky break. Like, I didn't do anything special to get in with Daily Candy. I mean, it was sort of right place at the right time, and following a passion of mine, which was photography and having fun with friends at parties.
That's so interesting. I mean, the question that jumps to mind is how much do you think luck has to play with it? But the general reason why I asked that before is because I was actually watching an interview with Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon.com, last night.
Yeah.
And he was kind of saying the same thing, where he didn't envision becoming this huge, technology, gigantic corporation. He was just selling books online, and he was, driving the pickup truck to the post office himself every day to ship the books. And he could never have imagined it getting to this point. And it's kind of similar to what you're saying, where you didn't really have this goal of taking over the industry. The industry wasn't even there. But I'm just kind of comparing the irony to people now who have that goal, who have that ambition, are chasing it and doing what they can, and they just can't seem to even get, a tenth of that success. And I wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some inherent personality traits about being a go-getter. I think for me, I had some really amazing examples of other small business owners and entrepreneurs in my life. My mom ran her own small business my whole life, and so I saw that as an example. I saw how she worked on vacations and was constantly creating real meaningful relationships with the people she worked with. And so, different things like that I think sort of I was surrounded by but didn't know it, I think informed the way I even decided to do this informational call with Daily Candy. Just little things like that I could have not taken the call. I could have said, I'm a teacher, I'm not going to pursue this. But it was sort of in my DNA, I think, in some ways, to always want to innovate and try something new and sort of go for an adventure. And that's what I saw it as, really. I saw it as a side adventure.
When did you quit your job to do this full time?
Yeah, so I taught for another year and a half, and I was a new teacher and a new business owner. And for anyone who knows anyone who's a teacher, a first-year teacher, it works around the clock, grading papers, writing tests, or making handouts, all that stuff. And so I would come home from school and do my grading and write my tests and all that till midnight, and then I'd work on LA Photo Party till 2 a.m, and then I'd sleep till 6 and go to school. And like during my free periods and breaks, I'd hide like in the alley behind campus and return client calls. And they'd be like, "What's that bell ringing in the background?" And I'd be like, "Oh, nothing. What bell?" Like, it sounds like Screaming Girls. I was at an all-girls school. They're like, "What's with all the Screaming Girls?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. The TV's on. The TV's on." So, but yeah, so I did that for about a year and a half. And then decided to make the transition to running the business full time, which was a big risk. This was 2007, 2008. So this was right in the middle of the recession. It was not a good time to be starting a photo booth business. But we had some awesome. Yeah, or was it? Right, exactly. Yeah. We had some really awesome high-end clients that we got from that Daily Candy ad, or even from literally, I did a search for party planners Los Angeles. I knew nothing. And I picked up the phone and called one of the biggest party planners in LA. I had no idea who she was. I didn't know she was one of the biggest party planners in LA. She's a known name. I mean, people know who this person is. I still work with her to this day. She goes, "I don't know why I took the time to talk to you that day, Brian. But look, 10 years later, we're still working together." I didn't know enough to be scared to do that, I think, is part of what made it work.
So do you remember what you said?
I said, "Hey, we got this." "Hi, I see that you do parties. We have this new concept for parties. We call it the supersized photo booth. It's a full photography studio that we bring to the party and print the pictures out instantly. No one else is doing it. And, I'd love to show it at one of your parties." And she took the time to listen to me, and I sent her some samples from that night at my house, the potluck, because those were our samples. And it's crazy. She and I joke about that to this day.
Did you remember if she picked up the phone, or did you have to go through a gatekeeper?
That's a really good question. So now that I'm telling the story, I think I may have gone through the gatekeeper and gotten a voicemail, left a voicemail, but then sent an email, because I think I remember her saying, I don't know why I took the time to answer that email. I get emails from vendors every day and I don't look at them. So some fate, lucky stroke of fate, she opened that email, took the time to read it and reply.
I mean, there's a lesson to be learned there for people listening, is that a lot of people think they're hustling and they're grinding, but they're not willing to just pick up the phone and make a phone call, right? And so a lot of times that's what it comes down to. And when you think about it, there's no real risk. What can go wrong? They don't pick up, or they say no. You're in the same position you were in before.
But this is another thing. I think that whenever there's a certain naivete to just picking up the phone and calling some big ass people and just straight up not knowing who they are.
It's a ballsy move. Yeah.
No, it completely is. And I think that people won't do that now just because they're going to get so much in their own heads.
Yep, exactly. No, I didn't know enough to be scared. So, if I had known who these people were, I may not have done it at the time. But I agree. I mean, cold calling is one of the hardest things to do, but you have to. I mean, how are you going to get new clients, and how are you going to get a start if no one knows you exist?
So what would you tell people that say they're too scared to do that, or it seems too uncomfortable? Are you saying that you have to get over it and do it, or you're saying that it's just really important and
so
you
I'm not saying
successful without doing it?
So I think you can be successful without doing it. I think there's other ways. I think there's better ways, but it's one of the ways. It's one of the tools at your disposal to find new clients. And if you're uncomfortable doing it, practice with a friend, practice with your dog, do it over and over again. And then like Ryan was saying,
talk to my plants, they
exactly,
need oxygen.
talk to your plants. Yeah. There's nothing to lose.
I was going to say, or find a friend on Craigslist.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing to lose. And I think it's good practice even for learning how to talk about your business, so that when you're at your next wedding expo or trade show and you need to, talk about the strengths of your business and what makes you unique, you've practiced before.
Were you passionate about being a teacher? Was that something that you always wanted to do?
I was passionate about being a teacher. I still am. And I really do think, I said this jokingly before because we were talking about dissecting a frog, but I actually do think there's parallels between being a teacher and running a business.
Let's expand on that.
Yeah. I mean, so much about running a business is about getting buy-in from your team, having common goals, feeling a sense of camaraderie and belonging. I mean, all these things that I think you can't run an effective classroom unless you can do that with your class. So I think there's a lot of leadership skills that a teacher has that are transferable to a business leader as well.
Can you talk about how, because a lot of people also struggle with when is the right time to quit. They're afraid of making the leap and then failing. Can you talk about what your mindset, how you thought about the decision when you made the leap?
Yeah, I mean, I was at a time in my life, I wasn't married at the time. I didn't have kids at the time. And I sort of thought it's now or never for me. Like, if I'm going to I thought of it as risk. And I thought, if I'm going to take a huge risk in my life, this is the time to do it. And I had worked for a year and a half doing both jobs, teaching and running the business. So I had set a lot of the groundwork and foundation, and I had clients at that point. So it wasn't like I had nothing, but it was a big risk. I don't know if anyone can tell you the right time to take that risk in your own life, but there's something that was so rewarding, but also like liberating when I finally took the plunge. Like, I stressed about making that decision for weeks. And when I finally made that decision and went into the head of school's office and let them know I wasn't going to be returning, and then walked out of that office, it was awesome. I'm doing this. Let's do this. Yeah.
So did you put together financial models and look at your income and expenses? Like, some people really dig into the nitty gritty of do I have enough? Is there enough income? How do you, I'm sure your friends ask you the same thing.
Yeah.
How do you advise people to look at that decision? That are listening?
Yeah, and you got to be smart about it. I think, knowing where you're at, where you want to be, and what that gap is, and being realistic with yourself about how you're going to bridge that gap, I think is really important. And these are pretty basic spreadsheets you can make. We're not talking about anything crazy here, where you put together a conservative model and an optimistic model, and you say, this is how many events I need to do to put food on my table. This is how many events I need to do to make as much money as I was making at my other job, and this is how many events I need to do to be balling and living large this year, and then And so you can have a plan. But I will say I'm not a numbers person by any stretch of the imagination. I'm really bad at math and numbers, and that's not one of my strengths, and I know that. And so as the company has grown, I've really intentionally brought in people that are good at that stuff because I'm not. I think I'm way better at setting a company culture and having a real good gut instinct of who's going to be a good asset to bring on board and who's going to help build a team and be committed to this vision that I have of growing this company. So I don't do the numbers.
You know what? Yeah. I'm not a numbers person by any means. I mean, I have like the max that I do is I set like sales goals for myself for every quarter, break it down by month, and then that's something that's a little bit easily attainable for me. But one of the things that I actually just saw this interview yesterday with Taraji Henson, and she said that she moved to Los Angeles with $700 in her pocket, and I guess with her child like in tow. She said that she got pregnant in college, and there were so many people that told her, "You're never going to finish college." She goes, "I walked across that stage with my kid on my hip to grab my diploma." I mean, there are just some times where you can't listen to what other people are saying. I'm sure that there was an accountant that told me, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing this," and I did it anyways. And then, it turned out to be one of the best things. I mean, there are just some things that aren't numbers based, and it's just more of a feeling. And, should I really be doing this right now?
I think the interesting thing to notice though is that like if you speak to the people that are listening, a lot of them really, really struggle with this, and they do pull out numbers. And I remember talking to Kelly Williams in a previous episode where she kind of admitted that if she wasn't laid off or let go, she doesn't know if she'd have she wouldn't have made the leap. So listening to someone like you who actually decided willingly to make the leap, I think is really interesting. That's why I wanted to kind of focus on that and see what we can take away for the audience.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the most interesting things about this journey for me is the skill set that I think helped me get started and be successful at the beginning. I had to shed those tendencies as the company grew. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I said, I think one of my skills was being able to have a good intuition and gut about who to hire, who to bring on, or what decision to make about what money to spend where. But those skills, like shooting from the hip, at the beginning, I resisted building structures a lot because I didn't want to box myself in. I had no development process of any kind. I was just sort of going for it based off of gut. And as the company grew, those same things that helped me when I was starting hurt me. Like the company got to a certain point that my intuition and gut couldn't do. I couldn't keep track of everything the company was doing anymore. So I couldn't make a gut decision about what to do with each part of our business. So at a certain point, I think being a good leader meant changing leadership style or changing the leadership skill set that I was depending on. And so now we constantly work to build structure and systems because we feel that if we can systematize the repetitive part of our company, that frees us up to be creative for the rest of our company. And so these, at the beginning, I really resisted structure. And now so much of what I do is creating structure and systems.
There's a great book about this called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and I think that's exactly what that's all about. Is what helped you in the beginning may not necessarily help you get to the next level. It's a great book.
Absolutely. I mean, so much of the growth of this company is due to us having an amazing team. And at the beginning, it was all about me controlling everything. And if I had tried to do that on our, 7th year, 8th year, 9th year, everyone would have quit. I mean, I had to change the leadership style from me making every decision to me creating other leaders within the organization and empowering them to make their own decisions.
How do you do interviews?
Like,
let's say Ryan walks in to LA Photo Party offices and says, "I would like a job." What happens?
That is such a funny question. So I don't know if have you heard? Have you heard what I do? Do you already know?
No, I really haven't.
So I mean, one of the things that I do that I thought was the reason you're asking is I ask them to sing a song to someone that they don't know because, I mean, it's not the first thing I do in the interview, but
sure.
I say to them, I call it the Brian Miller International Are You Outgoing test. So if you're outgoing enough to sing a song to a random stranger, and a lot of times I'm interviewing over the phone or whatever, so I'm the random stranger. If you're outgoing enough to sing a song to a random stranger, then you're probably the right kind of person. You're the same kind of person willing to pull a guest into a photo booth and get the party going around the photo booth at an event. So I tell them it's not about your singing voice. You can sing Snoop Dogg, you can sing Happy Birthday. It makes no difference. It's about being outgoing enough to do that. And I really make them sing it. And so that weeds people out. Yeah.
Ask me to sing a song.
Hey, it's not about your singing voice. You can do Snoop Dogg or Happy Birthday. What you got? Let's hear what you got.
Oh, no.
What key would you like?
Key of C, please.
No, that would be my answer. If you'd be like, Ryan, sing a song, I'd be like, what key?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
What do people sing mostly?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. And it's so fun to do. I mean, you can tell immediately if it's the kind of person that's going to be comfortable in our type of organization where we all have fun together and we party together and we're friends. Like, you can tell immediately if they freak out, like, they're not going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, maybe that's not the right interview question for every photo booth company, but for us, like, we all spend a lot of time together. Everyone who works for LA Photo Party, we hang out after work, we work hard and play hard. And so the other thing, though, that we do is our company put a lot of time and thought recently into creating core values for our company. And so we have 6 core values, and we use those as a benchmark when hiring, firing, rewarding, promoting. And so it's really about, even more than the skill set of the candidate, it's really about, are they a fit for our culture? And that's what our core values get at.
How difficult was it to come to those 6 core values?
Yeah, so one of the things we do is we take a manager's retreat every year. So there's about 12 of us that go away for 2 days, and we make meals together, we eat together, we drink together, but we also work really hard together. And so we went on a retreat for 2 days, and I structured the sessions of that retreat to result in a couple goals. And one of them was to leave that retreat with these core values. And so without the managers knowing what we were doing, what I asked them to do was, on a piece of paper, I asked the question, if you could clone anyone in the organization that by having them cloned would help lead us to greatness, who would it be? So they wrote down the names. And then I said, next to that, write down what characteristics those people have that make you say they'd help lead us to greatness. So people wrote things like compassionate, always going the extra mile, like always willing to lend a hand, super tech savvy. So they wrote all these characteristics, and then we put them all up on a board, and we ended up with like 180 characteristics of the types of people in our organization that, if we could clone them, would make us great. And then I told them what we were doing. I said, on this board, somewhere on this board, are the core values that our company is going to use to make sure that when we're hiring new employees, they fit in, and that we know what we're asking our staff to do when we ask them to do a great job, and that we're going to use this. So I explained why core values were important. So anyways, we distilled that down, and we came up with the 6 core values. You want to hear the core values?
Absolutely.
Yes. So the core values have been awesome. It's changed the language we use when we speak to each other. It's changed the way we hire and fire. It's changed the way we interact with our clients. So the first one is we innovate fearlessly. So that's all about innovations in software and in coming up with new concepts for events and stuff like that, and in the products we develop. The second one is we thrive on creativity. So we keep work interesting by being creative and instilling that in our staff and in the interactions we have with our clients. The third one is we celebrate authenticity. So that one's a lot about valuing the unique characteristics that our staff bring to the table. The fourth one is we surpass expectations. So both amongst fellow staff members, but also the expectations of our clients. The fifth one is we got your back. So we look out for each other and we look out for our customers. And the sixth one is we party. And they are all important. So we make sure to party together as a company. And like I said, we support each other a lot in other things we're doing outside of work, but we also work hard and play hard.
Brian, where do you get these ideas? Like the fact that you thought about coming up with core, like, are you a well-read person? Do you have other mentors that we don't know about? Where do you get these ideas to do these things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have any formal training in business development or strategic business planning or anything like that. But I've tried to read to fill the gaps in the things that I don't have a background in or could use some extra help with. So the structure actually for that entire manager's retreat, I adopted from a book called Traction. And so I took the concepts that were laid out in the book Traction, which was about strategic planning and long-term setting a long-term vision for your organization. And I took things from that and I made them relevant to what we were trying to do. So I definitely rely on some books that have helped me a lot. And I do have a coach, an executive coach, that's helped me a lot as our company was having some growing pains. And I really recommend anyone else. I know Kelly Williams talked about this on your program as well. That was really invaluable for me, whether it's an individual coach or a entrepreneurs group. I know there's some great groups of business owners that get together and help troubleshoot each other's challenges. And I think that's really, really valuable.
So not my mother.
Well, it could be your mother. It could be. I mean, like I said, for me, my mom was definitely a huge inspiration watching her run her own small business. So could be. I'll tell you, I mean, we have a customer advisory board. It's, some of our best customers, we stay one extra day in Vegas after the Photo Booth Expo, and we all get together, and it's a chance for them to tell us what new software innovations they want to see in Photo Booth Upload and Photo Party Upload, what they want to see in the next product we make, and then that's a lot of value for us. So they're telling us what the market wants, and in exchange, we bring in a guest speaker who talks to them, and then we go party with them at night. But that exact structure I took from my mother's business. She had a customer advisory board, and so don't your mom might have some secret words of wisdom that should be listened to. Is all I'm saying. Yeah.
So one of the we posted that we were talking to you on Photo Booth Network, and we got a lot of questions, to say the least. Yeah. One of the things that everyone wanted to know is, how do you, I guess, keep staff? I know that a lot of photo boothers will hire people and then they'll, flake off. What is your, I guess, trick, or is there like a little meter that you just have like instilled in you that you can just read people? How do you find really good people?
Yeah. So first off, I do want to give a major shout out to all of the LA Photo Party staff that might listen to this, because they really are what makes our organization work. It's so cool that they, a lot of people on the Photo Booth Network and at Photo Booth Expo come up to hang out with our staff because they've had really positive interactions with them, either at an event or over Facebook or for tech support or whatever. So we have an amazing team, and we have an incredible retention rate. Like, there's people who have been with our company for 8 years. There's a lot of people who have been there in the like 4 to 6 year range. And so I think the key is food. So I don't know if you know this, but I'm not kidding.
Easy?
So check this out. I don't know if you know this, but we have a chef that cooks lunch for us every day.
Wow.
I, as you heard at the beginning of the show, I used to grow vegetables with kids. I still grow vegetables myself as a hobby. So we grow vegetables at the office, and the chef cooks a vegetarian meal for lunch every day. And like, what other business does that? You get to hang out with your coworker buddies around a home cooked meal instead of getting in your car and driving to like Taco Bell or whatever. And we build a lot of camaraderie, and there's a lot of bonding and sharing of ideas that happens around food. So I'm half kidding, but I'm only half kidding.
Nobody complains about the lack of meat.
So they can complain. They complain until, check it out. They complain until they've tried it. So our chef makes like amazing like veggie lasagna, veggie tacos. Like, I mean, the food is good. So we've converted some meat eaters over the years to
pasta.
What? Yeah, we got all kinds of good stuff straight from the garden.
I'm from Texas. That's not happening.
Well, hey, let me put it out there. You have an open invitation to come have an LA Photo Party lunch, and then we'll jump back on Super Boothers podcast and talk about this again.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Then you can come to my house and see the cow out front.
But other than that, I mean, I think it's including staff in creating core values, so it's not being dictated from the top down. Allowing people's authenticity to shine through and be appreciated. Making it fun to go to work. So here's an example. We do a quarterly review. Once a quarter, we have like a 5-hour meeting, and we, debrief how the year is going so far and what we want to improve on. And everyone takes responsibility for pieces of the things we said that we're going to work on, and they get assigned. And so it's a lot of hard work. But at the end, we throw a party, and I do something fun for them. So at the party, I've done things like had masseuses come in and do massages for everyone. We threw a puppy party one year where this company came in and brought like 25 puppies, and so everyone got to lie on the ground and have puppies roll all over them. We've done escape rooms, so it's these things about building a team, not just hiring an employee.
I like your inventive ways on how to blow money for your staff. I think it's, I mean, truthfully, it's half the fun. I mean, I don't do it as much anymore, which I probably should, just because, I mean, we're all spread all across the state of Texas. So it's a little bit hard to get everyone together, especially when everyone has kids. But we used to, I would say, hey, everyone, meet here at 10, everyone would come thinking we're going to work. And you know what? No, let's go to the movies. Let's go to Topgolf. Let's go bowling. I think one year we went to Six Flags. I mean, taking care of the people that take care of you is the best. And that is absolutely one way to guarantee retention.
Absolutely. No, the team that runs the day-to-day, the success of the company depends on them. And so it's so important as a leader of an organization, like you said, to take care of them, make sure they know that they're appreciated, and celebrate your successes together as a team.
Brian, how much thought do you put into these things before you do them? How do you determine what's worth trying? Not just this fun stuff with the employees, but even like the quarterly things that you mentioned and in the core values. A lot of these things require a lot of thought and work. How do you determine what's worth putting the time into and will actually reap some results?
Yeah, it's been a process for me to learn that creating structure and focusing on development pays dividends. And we didn't do it a ton in the beginning, but now it's my main job in the organization. So I try as much as I can to work on the company instead of in the company. So I'm constantly trying to figure out ways to create better structures and set up our staff to be successful on their own without me needing to micromanage. So that's my main job. I don't go to events. I don't coil cables when they come back from parties. I don't do graphic design. I'm really working on where do we want to be 3 years from now? Where do we want to be 5 years from now? And we even look at where do we want to be 10 years from now? And what are the stepping stones we need to set in place to get there? So that's paramount for me. It's so important. And then it ties back to your previous question. How do you have happy employees? They're happy because they have autonomy, because I'm not doing their job. It's their job. They have ownership of it and take pride when they do a good job at their work, knowing that they were given a project. They got to see it through from beginning to end and be involved in the vision of where that project's taking us.
There's lots of vendors selling photo booths, backdrops, props, and all sorts of other stuff you didn't even think you needed. So what's one place where you can see and compare everything all at once?
The internet.
No. Try again.
The Google.
No, the Photo Booth Expo.
Come see us live and in person at the Westgate Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, March 12th through the 14th. We have some fantastic giveaways and we can't wait to see you.
And now back to the show. Before we move too far from these early days, what is your thought on? I know you made an offhand comment before about how you did Craigslist in the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, there's always this debate online about going after higher clientele and don't go after the low price people, yada yada yada. What would you tell people that are in those early days? Do you think you should just grab everything you can get as long as it's profitable and that'll kind of catapult you into growth, or do you think that's not the right way to go about it?
So I can tell you our philosophy. I don't want to tell anyone else what they should be doing, but so our philosophy is that we don't compete on price. We compete on...
But was that your philosophy also in the early days?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I mean, it was different when we started because there wasn't as much competition. We were really doing something unique, which is much harder now. But this is carried through from the beginning. So it was we don't compete on price. We compete on service, creativity, and features. So if all we're doing is competing on price, and a client calls me and says, "Hey, the company down the street is willing to do it for less," all I can do is either say, "Sorry, I won't do it for less," or we'll beat their price and go lower. So my only option really is a race to the bottom in prices. But if I'm competing on service, creativity, and features, I can say to them, the reason the company down the street costs less is because they're not offering this feature that we offer, or they're not going to put together free mock-ups of 5 different ideas for your corporate event. We have an entire creative team that's going to do that for you for free before you ever sign a contract, because we're focused on showing you how creative we can be. So by focusing on the service, creativity, and features, we're able to charge more because we're able to tell the client, you're not comparing apples to apples anymore. you're creating a really unique experience to another company that only cares about cost.
Professor Miller, I have a question.
How do you raise your hand?
I'm raising my hand right now.
He did raise his hand.
I
with
totally,
with a pencil in his hand.
with a pencil, yeah, and my glasses on. No, so how do you really prevent someone from, if you're providing, like, let's say a mock-up prior to them putting any money down, how do you prevent them from taking that mock-up and then just running it, over to someone else to do it for cheaper?
Well, we're not giving them the working files. We're not giving them PNG overlay and a JPEG background, for example.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so it has one of our staff in it who tested it in a real photo booth to show them what the output would look like. So they could take it and show it to someone else, but like that other company would have to reproduce the graphics from scratch. I kind of dare them to try. And we think we're more creative and we're going to make the graphic look better. And, that's what we're competing on. So sure, they could take it and shop it around, I guess, if they want. I mean, there's not much integrity to that approach in hiring your vendors, but I don't worry about it.
So you also mentioned somewhere along the line, you realized, what you were doing won't help you get to the next level. Can you talk about what kind of signs came up that showed you that, and how you slowly started to shift from a one-man operation to building the structure? Like, what happened in between?
Yeah, I think I reached a breaking point in some ways of just taking on too much responsibility that resulted in me not having a good work-life balance, me not having enough time with my family, carrying too much stress, working really long hours. At the beginning, I mentioned now I don't go to events hardly ever, but at the beginning I went to every single event. I was the one who cooked the lunches at the beginning. I was the one who took the trash out. I was the one that made the website, even though I don't know anything about making websites. So I've done almost every job in our company. And when we got to a certain number of clients, I couldn't do them all well. I was doing them all poorly because my plate was so full. There was no strategic planning. Everything was putting out fires. And that is a good indication. If you feel like the main thing you're doing is putting out fires, it's probably time to have someone come on board who you can delegate some of those fires to, or fire prevention would be even better to prevent the fires from happening before they start, which is really about creating systems.
Okay, so I think the next step after you determine that there's too many fires and you got to put them out, and how do you? This is back to the question about interviewing and hiring. Yeah. You kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but that seemed to be something that people really wanted to dig into. How do you start getting qualified candidates to apply? How do you find them? And then is there anything else that you do during the interview process? Is there any training that you do that's special? Like, how does that whole hiring and training and development of your staff look like in the early days versus now?
That's a really good question. One thing I should mention here is we spent about a year putting a lot of these questions that you're asking together in a document that when someone buys a photo booth from us, they get for free. So it's called Secrets to Success. And it's a lot of the startup stuff you're asking about. So all the questions you're asking are things we try and set up our photo booth owners to be prepared for, set them up for success, because we really believe that our success is linked to their success. We want them to crush it with any photo booth they buy from us or any of the software that we provide for them, so that they'll come back to us and need a second booth or a third booth. So in terms of hiring, so we talk about where to look for new staff in this document. And in LA, it's really interesting because almost everyone who works for LA Photo Party is an actor. So in LA, there's a pool of actors. They're outgoing. They often have other skill sets. So they might do graphic design or have a marketing background or whatever, but they're looking for flexible work hours so that they can go on auditions in between. And so we have this pool of actors here that we've relied heavily on. But I think other places are things like camp counselors, I think, have the skill sets for working events, people who work with children. So actually the thing about singing a song during your interview, I got that from when I used to work at My Gym Children's Fitness Center, because you have to be outgoing and spunky and not embarrassed to do silly things. So I used to work at My Gym Children's Fitness Center for a summer when I was right out of college. That's like Gymboree, if you're not familiar with that. So I think you're looking for other marketplaces like camps or daycare centers and things like that, where the skill set is similar, which is like reliable, outgoing, high energy, and likes to have fun. So those are the pools that I would point people towards pulling from.
Yeah, I've actually heard a lot of people have success with teachers.
Absolutely.
Enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I guess this kind of ties all into the main thing that you're kind of known for is the culture, right? So getting the right people, like how do you kind of, you mentioned the fun things like getting people to sing, right? How do you, even though you're trying to build this fun culture that still gets stuff done, how do you determine what is like, I guess I don't know how to phrase it, but how do you know that works? And it's not just going to attract people that are, just kind of goofing off and not really helping the company succeed.
Yeah, I think this goes back to the things we do, like putting together core values and doing it together as an organization. So, one of our core values is we got your back. So if you're at a party and there's 2 staff members working the event and one of them is off drinking or flirting or whatever, like they don't have your back. That's written on our wall. Like literally it's written on our wall that there's an expectation that, we got your back. And so by creating that shared language that we all speak, it makes it really easy to call someone out. And the expectation is super clear that you're supposed to have each other's back. You're supposed to surpass expectations. And so, we have a lot of fun, but we take the work that we do really seriously. I mean, we know that if we're providing software and hardware that is the tool that another business depends on, that's a serious responsibility. If we're providing the tech support that another company needs to be successful, then they're relying on us. We need to have their back and we need to surpass their expectations, out to our clients, to you guys. And so we take that really seriously. And from the beginning, I've taken it seriously. So I made sure the first person I hired understood that also. And then the second person and the third person, I think I mentioned before, like part of my job I see is creating leaders so that they can lead the people who are in their teams. So like our head of marketing, sets the tone for his entire team that work with him on marketing. And so it trickles down from there, but we've also all created it together, rather than it being like handed from the top. I think that's super important.
Where do you see the future of PhotoBoost going?
That's a good question. I don't think it's going away. I think that we're going to continue to see new technology that changes what people mean when they say a photo booth. So I think augmented reality, virtual reality, all of those are great examples of technology that was developed for other industries that's being infused into our industry. I think we have to continue to come up with innovations of things people can't do with their own cell phones. So we need to offer them an experience, that's more than just a photo they can take on their own cell phones. And so it's an industry that's never stagnant. And so that's where we get, we innovate fearlessly, because if we stop innovating, we're going to fall behind. You can't stop innovating and be successful in this industry, I don't think.
Well, one thing is, to me, it seems like clearly what you're doing is working. I saw the video on your website. I recommend everyone checks it out, Meeting the Team. And I thought it was really well done, and it shows you how everyone's kind of having fun but takes the job seriously. So it's clearly working. I would suggest people check that out. I think one of the things that I was curious about is, now that we kind of got through that beginning phase, how did you segue into developing software? Why did you decide to develop software? And what came first, the software or the manufacturing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first we were just doing events. And then we had clients starting to ask about sharing photos via email. Think about this. Now we take that for granted. So when we started, there was no way to share a photo. We could only print it out or put it on a website later that people could come to. And so I started using Picasso, which was a free program by Google that would sort of display the pictures on a screen, and you could choose one to print it. And so that's how we did on-site printing. And they would allow you to email from that program. So I started networking computers on site and using those as email share stations, but there was no way to do social media yet. And I hired my first developer that I found on like a VWorker type website to build a plugin for Picasso that would allow people to post to email, Facebook, and Twitter. And at the time, nothing like that existed. It's really, really hard to imagine now, but a photo booth didn't connect to social media in any way at the time. And so we developed this system where they could start posting to email, Facebook, and Twitter from events. And this was another thing I did that it's just like, I could have been too scared to do, but I just picked up the phone. You know what I did? I Googled, I found a Hewlett Packard press release. And at the bottom, it had someone's name and their phone number for press inquiries. So I called them and I told them I was doing this new thing with photo booths at events and sharing to social media, and I wanted touchscreens. And they had just released this giant 60-inch touchscreen all-in-one computer, and they ended up giving me 4 of them for free because I told them that people, movers and shakers in LA, would see it at these high-end parties or whatever. So we used to lug these giant 60-inch touchscreen all-in-one PCs, and we'd network them and use them as sharing stations in Picasa, which was this free program with this little plugin we ran. And so that was our first foray into software development. And then iPads started gaining popularity, and I thought, this is a way smaller touchscreen and would be way easier to set up on site. And that's when we hired our first real legit software team to develop what is now Photo Party Upload. But here's the really interesting thing is, at a certain point in that development process, I took another risk and I decided to turn our entire business model upside down on its head. So what I mean by that is, previously, we had designed this secret weapon that made party planners come to us, which was our ability to post to social media. And I decided to give that away to our competitors by releasing Photo Party Upload to any photo booth company. And instead of having our thinking of the other photo booth companies as competitors, I turned them into partners. So if we lost a job to another photo booth company, well, hey, at least we were going to get a little bit of revenue from them if they use our sharing software. And it was a huge gamble. And I think people thought I was out of my mind. But now, fast forward, that was 2011. So fast forward to today, we've created this incredible network of 3,000 photo booth companies around the world that share events with each other, sub out events to each other. Again, there was no photo booth network. So we were one of the first companies that I know of that was getting national tours, events in multiple cities for the same client. And we had a network of photo booth owners all using the same sharing software all over the country. And so we were able to take on these movie promotions that a lot of people listening to this podcast probably helped us with. And we could guarantee some continuity in all of the cities. So it ended up being a gamble that paid off.
How'd you make that decision? Right now, it seems so genius, but I imagine you were probably so scared to make that decision. How'd you decide that?
I mean, it was a scary decision, and I was never 100% sure that it was going to be the right decision. But I didn't want to get into cutthroat competition. I knew that someone could create an app that could be similar, and if we were trying to hoard this app for ourselves and a competitor released something similar, then we weren't going to be in as strong of a position as if we shared the technology and charged for it. And I'll tell you a funny story. The first time, so we released this and people started downloading it from the App Store, and they pay per use when they use Photo Party Uploads. It's a free app. I don't get any money. I still to this day don't get any money when someone downloads it or installs it. I only get money when they use it. So we launched it. It was up on the App Store, and I was on a vacation with now my wife, my girlfriend at the time. We were on a beach in Hawaii, and I had my emails coming through to my cell phone. And all of a sudden, I started getting these PayPal notifications of money coming into my account. And that was because the end of the pay period, every 2 weeks, the pay period ends, and PayPal collects the money from the use. And so I got $200 or something deposited into my PayPal, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can sit on a beach in Hawaii and the money just arrives in the bank account. It's like, this is incredible.
Living the dream.
Yeah, living the dream, $200 at a time, yeah. So yeah, that was the beginning of it. And I mean, man, we've formed amazing friendships with other photo booth companies all over the world because we shared that technology and thought of them as partners instead of competitors. So I don't regret that decision for a second.
It reminds me of the adage of, you've probably heard of this, but who made the most money in the gold rush in America? It wasn't people digging for gold. It was people selling the jeans and the pickaxes.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
Those selling the tools probably can, make you more successful than just being a competitor and viewing people as competition.
Well, and it diversifies your revenue stream. So, we started doing photo booths during the recession. We saw a lot of photo booth companies that were just doing corporate get themselves into a lot of trouble during the 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009, because corporate stopped putting on such extravagant events. And it really made me think, I want to make sure I have a diverse revenue stream so that if one dries up, there's money coming in from somewhere else. And it's, it all tied in with our desire to innovate, our desire to be creative. Like, we really like designing new features. And that's why we ended up building our own photo booth software. So photo party upload is really just about sharing to social media. There's some manipulation that you can do, but it's really about sharing. We ended up designing photo booth upload because we had clients asking us to do things that weren't possible in any of the existing photo booth software on the market. So, and that's how we built our company from the beginning, really. It's about clients coming to us with crazy demands that there's no existing solution for, and then we create it for that client. We become the guinea pigs for testing it. We perfect it or make it as good as we can, and then we release it to our partners, which are the people listening to this podcast. That's how all of the features in Photo Booth Upload, many of which have appeared later in other photo booth software, no names going to get mentioned, but
wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly. But things like morphing, things like green screen animated GIF, things like light painting, things like instant slow motion video with instant processing, and then adding green screen to instant slow motion video. I could go on and on. I mean, those are all things that were client requests that currently at the time couldn't be done with existing software. And then we released them in ours.
You are a trailblazer. I'm just going to say, I think if there was a Mount Rushmore, you know how people talk about who's the Mount Rushmore of rap? I think Brian Miller would be on there.
No, I'm just having fun.
People would agree. People would agree. So I guess
you're like, stop, keep going, keep going.
It's true though. It's true though.
I mean, I don't want it to come off like that. I mean, we do. So a lot of these were for corporate clients asking for solutions that didn't yet exist, but also a lot of them are from other photo booth owners who had a client asking them to do something that didn't exist yet. Yeah. So they came to us and we partnered with them to do some sort of custom development. We do that a lot. We'll do the development basically at half cost if we can continue, so what we tell them is they come to us and they say, we have this client that wants to do this thing. It can't be done in any of the existing software. What will you charge us to develop it? And we'll say, it'll be X to develop it and you own the code, or Y to develop it, half the cost of X, but we're going to own the code and we're going to release that later on to all of our, photo booth owners, photo booth software users who use Photo Booth Upload. And so that's a great way for them to get that feature built super low cost, and then for us to share it with the photo booth community.
So I have one final burning question.
All right, hit me.
To all the people that are looking up to this mountain peak that you're on, what would you, if they have a hard time imagining how big a photo booth rental business can become, do you have any numbers, not specifically about you or anything that you've heard in the industry? How big can a rental business really get?
Yeah, well, first off, I don't want to paint this picture of us on a mountain. This has been a rocky road of ups and downs for sure. Blood, sweat, and tears, the whole thing. But I mean, we want to keep growing, and we think it's awesome when other photo booth companies are striving to grow as well. And so, I mean, I read it. I saw a video about Bosco a couple of years ago where they said they were making $7 million a year. Since then, they've spun off of an event planning company, so they're probably making more than that now. I don't really know. There's definitely companies that are bigger than us and have wider reaches than us, and I don't know what they're making, but that I know Bosco, publicly came out and said a few years ago they were making $7 million a year. That's a big number.
Yeah, I'll take a piece of that.
Right. Nice. I will too. Yeah, for sure. But it's not just about getting as big as you can, as fast as you can. I think that's also really dangerous. I laughed a little when you were asking about the Infinite because it blew up way faster than we were ready for. So when the Infinite came out, it was the first photo booth on the market that used the bounce card system for lighting. So for the first time, you didn't need a big umbrella on top of your booth to evenly light a green screen or needing any additional lighting on stands at all. It had a really sleek design. I think it was a little bit more thought was put into the aesthetic of it than at the time other photo booths had. And then it won the Photo Booth of the Year award. It's the first time they had given it. And it just blew up, and we weren't ready for it. We had no experience with supply chain management on that scale. We were really faking it till we made it for those first handful of Infinites that we built. And so rapid growth can be scary. And it's, I in hindsight, if I had known how many people were want an infinite and how quickly, I probably would have waited to release it and built some infrastructure beforehand. And eventually we caught up and we got through the waiting list and we learned a lot. We learned a lot about being systematic, about calculating where our margins needed to be ahead of time, about knowing when Chinese New Year's is. So the few components that do come from China, we could pre-order. Lots of lessons were learned through that experience.
This has been a lot of great information. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. This has been super fun.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much to Brian Miller for joining us today. You can visit him online at laphotoparty.com. Please feel free to message us on Facebook and submit your questions to us online at www.superboothers.com. Superboothers swag is now available in the store. We have totes, t-shirts, coffee mugs. We have it all. Visit us at superboothers.com/shop. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.